Hello, selectors. Welcome back to the Life Burst Podcast. We're going to go over the 5 new centers for the new Dissona set that's coming out here. We're going to start with Nanashi here. So, none of these lists are my list. I've pulled them from Japanese GPs. I believe this one is from the 6th GP. Let me just double check that before I do it. Before I wreck myself. Yeah, it's the 6th GP. It's one of the 3rd or 4th place. Uh, you can always find the information for this on my Dexys stuff. Links down below. So let's just talk about it. Let's start with Nanashi, right? That's always the best place to start with this stuff, is trying to explain what this L-Rig is and why this L-Rig is specifically good. Okay, so Nanashi is a level 3 black L-Rig with the following abilities, and there's quite a bit. You get coins. That's the first one. You get 3 coins when you turn into level 3. You get 2 when you're at 0, so you get 5 coins overall. You also get at the beginning of your attack phase, if all of the Signy on your field are Dissona, then you can put out a virus on the opponent's field. It's a very Nanashi-esque thing to do. Then after that, all of the Signy during that attack phase get negative 3,000. That are in the viruses. So the goal is turn 3, having one field get negative 3,000 to get the second lane, and then both of them get the negative 3,000s, and then 3 onwards be third effect 3 of them and negative. Nanashi's a bit of an interesting deck. It's gone through a couple different lives. Oh, I should finish explaining what this is. Outside of that, you also have the action. It's not once per game, it's Exceed 4, but it's basically once per game. Target one of the Signy on your opponent's field that gets negative 10,000 power, and the opponent puts the top 6 cards of their deck into their trash, so you mill them out of it. Nanashi has kind of an interesting story in Japan. It started out kind of as this hyper-aggressive discard strategy, a la almost set 1 no limit, where he actually used Ray as its main piece, as its main assist to really do stuff. Since then, it's sort of transformed into more of a mid-range deck, similar to how Remember has transformed a bit into a filtering its deck for the best cards that it could be playing, and playing some amount of mess with your opponent's resources, aka discard. Mid-range-esque deck. This has done the same thing. So you're going to find a lot of similarities between this and I really want to say Atoms. Like, this just feels like an upgraded Atoms. It doesn't have H2O, which I think is downside in terms of defense, but upside in terms of everything else is easier to pull off. It's got mill built into it, so you can really you're going to get at least 1, maybe even 2 refreshes from your opponents based on its partner Signy. And we should talk about the partner Signy as well, because it is, I think, paramount to this type of deck's strategy. Is Hinonim. Let me just go ahead and pull the translation out here. Hinonim is a level 3 black Signy with the following abilities. Its auto is at the beginning of your attack phase. If there is a Nanashi on your field, the opponent puts the top 4 cards of their deck into their trash. So with this, you're doing anywhere from 10 mil with Nanashi to 14 mil with Nanashi. That should be enough to basically always get at least 1 refresh. You can push that number a little bit if you want to. It's also got the enter ability of pay black, target Dissona on your field or on your trash, put it into the field. It's actually very good. It's unassuming, but very, very good. You can basically get anything, including itself, like another copy of itself, to put out into the field, and then fill out the last of your field, basically meaning that with 1 Nanashi, you can fill out all 3 lanes. Or with 1 Hinonim, you can fill out all 3 lanes, which is actually quite good. It's also one of the few partner Signy that I think have a really good life burst, which is that it is target 1 card in your trash and add it to your hand. It can be a spell, and it can be a guard. You can't put it to the field, which is kind of crap, but the versatility it allows you to do is quite good, which is why you're going to see a lot of decks almost toolboxing with this, because this itself enables a trash toolbox very well. It enables it on its front phase, and it also enables it on its life burst. It's also got one more ability, which is you can pay your 5 coins, so it's basically once per game. You're going to pay your 5 coins, and you're going to give target Signy on your opponent's field negative 12k, which basically removes anything. And you don't necessarily need to be pretty stingy with it. You can be pretty quick with it if you want. You don't know how many times you're going to get the Hedonym per game. Um, so that already tells us a little bit about what this deck is going to do. It's going to want to toolbox a little bit. It's going to want to mill your opponents out, and it's going to want to do negative 3000s across the field. How do you make sure your negative 3000s hit very well? The answer is you supplement its plan A with plan B, and the plan B being discard. If you give your opponents less options to work with and they're just drawing off the top, they might draw two things that are both 2000 power or 3000 power, right? Which means that it's gonna die pretty immediately. So you are supplementing this type of stuff with a bunch of discard. You've got Madoka Float, of course, to get yourself hand, and then Madoka Dub. This allows you to make yourself able to discard something at random, but also lets you just grow very quickly, so you can get your 3-3-1 splits out. I think this deck really wants to have 3-3-1 splits pretty quickly. But it makes your opponent discard a card at random. Mill Revise to get yourself Enter back. This deck is a little Enter hungry, more than you'd expect, because it has a lot of microtransactions with those like Henonyms, for example. And then Mel Invisible, because it's a 3-stop, and 3-stops are good right now. Xenocluster, because in a discard mirror, you'd probably like to draw more cards, and I don't think you win the discard war necessarily on your own. But then you're out running Unrest, and Unrest is just an insane piece. It allows you to catch back up in the game when you're losing 2 resources by drawing 2 extra cards. It also then hurts your opponents, even if it doesn't discard them down. Doing it on turn 2 or 3 can drop your opponent's hand to options to like 4 on their turn, and that really can hamper what they do, especially if they have limits that they have to play around. And then of course bottoming decking something is just, you're going to be able to bottom deck anything. So let's say you don't have the ability to get rid of something on the opponent's field. This has a lot of negative effects, but maybe something can't be negative, and maybe it gets positive instead of amino acid, right? This will do that kind of stuff, right? This will get rid of it. Then what you're going to see is a lot of toolboxing. I think we're going to go over the not toolbox stuff, the things that are like a 4 of first, and then we'll just go quickly over the toolbox options that were chosen here. So you're going to run for Monomin, Pond Turtle, same card. It's a 5k if you have more cards than your opponent. I don't think you will always have more cards than your opponent. I think this is the type of deck that is, you don't really care that you don't have a ton of cards in your hand. You're going to bring them back from your trash anyways. So you don't. It's more to get your opponent off of cards. For Ivy here, again, I think this deck can be a little expensive in its costs that it's paying. So the Ivies help supplant that. For Musica, again, here's one of those costs. You're going to be able to give negative 3000 plus. You'd be surprised how much that kills, right? So your for example, level 2s on your opponent's field will often be 5Ks, and this will do the first 3000, and then the next virus will do the rest to kill it off. This also pairs nicely with the negative 10k that the Nanashi does, so that we are doing negative 13k with this. And then, let's see here, for Hinonim, of course, like I said, for the toolboxing. And for Matcha, now this may not seem like it's a toolboxing card, may seem a little out of line here. The fact that this gets stuff into your trash means that you can get rid of the toolboxing stuff that you don't want, and you can draw cards that you do want, or you can get to your toolbox cards that might be locked in your deck a little bit quicker. I think that card is fantastic here as a 4 of. And then we have 4 extra. This is, again, to help back the discard of this deck. It's just to help push some more of that, like limiting the options to let your viruses really take over. Let's get into the toolboxing. You'll notice there's a lot of 1-ofs in this deck in particular. You've got a 1-of Bang. We know its functions. It kills Exia. It kills big things without really targeting or without doing much work. And it also can be a 15k, which is very nice against certain decks. You've got an Umir, right? This one comes directly out of your trash. You don't even need to fight for it. Its function is to give negative 10k. Plus the negative 3k with your viruses means that this is always live to basically kill pretty much anything and everything that you need to kill. Sans, like a Bang or something. We've got 1 Maho. Sometimes you just need a little bit more mill, right? Like even 14 doesn't always do the job that you need it to do, and you need to speed the clock up a little bit. Also, there's certain decks out there, like, for example, Paraluke, which might mill themselves a little quicker, and you'd rather get the refresh before they go into level 3, for example, or get close to the refresh before they go into level 3, and this can help make those games a little awkward. You've got Alpha. This, again, also helps with that idea, but more importantly, it's a target for Hinanim to bring back out, and then for free, give negative 5k to the to one of the opponent's field. We've got a Yotsuba. Yotsuba is just a good blue count that also draws a card, so it helps keep your hand up against the discard mirrors that you're going to be running into. There's a Machina here. This also is just more mill. Like I said, sometimes decks churn through their decks so fast that you might just mill them, I don't know, 6, right? And then they refresh, and then you might generally have another shot at refreshing them again if they're blowing through their deck again, and you get a mill 4 plus a mill 4 plus another mill 4 here, right? Like that 12 could be enough to potentially mill someone out a second time. Seen it happen. Cairo is just basically Lancelot. It helps negative 5k plus the 3k means that you're killing 8ks, which is the other level 2s out there. Kagomeka gets back a level 3 from your trash, so it helps add to this sort of like toolboxy approach. I think this deck maybe has a little bit too many toolbox targets and not enough to pull toolbox stuff out of. So I probably would go up to 2, if not 3 Kagomeka. I like its life burst a lot too. So that's my personal take on it. And then one Pale Lady. You never know when you need to actually turn something off or just target something like an Exia just to make them go off on their trigger first in order to choose more carefully with what you're going to do with your effects. Or you need to turn a Bang off, right, from a 15k to a 12k, which means that the negative 10k plus the 3k for the virus will kill it. You got to do math in this deck. Then there's a one of Black Aura. This one confuses me a little bit here because it's got a good life burst, but outside of that, it's just a free kill at the cost of a card in your hand. But there's not really any great way to bring it back outside of Hinanim's life burst. But it's here, and it got 3rd or 4th place in the Japanese 6th GP, so can't really argue too much about it. One Emergence again being another toolbox spell to basically get a card that's in your enter, probably Hinanim out of there and put it back into your hand. Like I said, sometimes you eat your own enter quite a bit in this deck, which is why there's a fair amount of re-enter charging here. Overall, I think Paraluke is excuse me. I think Nanashi is a really, really, really strong deck into the meta. I think we're going to see quite a bit of it. It seems to be Adam's successor, and I think Adams was quite good prior. Even in set 12, I liked Adams. So I wouldn't be surprised to see quite a bit of this at even the GP. And I don't think it would be wrong to bring this to the GP. This is not necessarily a brain turns off deck because you do need to think about the toolboxing. That's the simple side of it. But the deck's attack lines are very clear, and I think there are some decks in this format that aren't those things. And because of that, playing a deck that is has very clear options of what it's supposed to be doing, discard your opponent, open the lanes, toolbox a little bit, probably in that order, is actually quite powerful, because while your opponent's kind of maybe will make mistakes and get punished for it, Nanashi, I think, is a little bit more immune to that type of gameplay, and I think it's quite strong. So let me know what you guys think. This is, I think, my pick for just, in a vacuum, probably the most powerful deck you could be playing in the 5 centers that are coming out. But let me know what your thoughts are.